Today, we'll be talking about one of the most well-known deities in Igbo's culture and tradition. This deity is associated with the harvest and production of a cash crop which is seen as the king of all cash crops in the whole of Igboland. This cash crop is none other than the yam. This deity is responsible for everything that has to do with this cash crop, and before any planting season and after every successful harvest, she is actually given or offered sacrifices to thank her for a successful harvest, and also before every planting season to plead with her to actually make sure that the planting season is successful. This deity is none other than the popular Ahiajiokú. Hi, welcome to African Stories, Legends and Myths, where we share stories, folklores, and mysteries that are of African origin. If you are new here, welcome. Please feel free to hit the subscribe button and click on that notification bell so you won't miss any of our weekly uploads. So now, let's dive right into it. Ahiajiokú is the deity or the goddess who is in charge of the planting and the harvesting of the cash crop yam, which is seen as the king of all crops in Igboland. Ahiajiokú is highly or strongly tied or connected to the goddess Ani, who is the goddess of land and fertility, where these cash crops are grown till they are harvested. Before every planting season, farmers go and give sacrifices or make sacrifices to Ahiajiokú, begging her for her favors and to ensure a smooth and successful planting season. And at the end of each planting season, that is after the harvest, another sacrifice is made to Ahiajiokú to thank her for a successful harvest, and a feast thrown all together to commemorate the successful harvest of yams for that particular period. Histories or historical record of this practice is seen in Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart, where Okonkwo mentions how he makes sacrifices to Ahiajiokú before planting his yams, and also another set of sacrifices after a successful harvest to thank her for her benevolence so far. Depending on the part of Igboland where you go to, Ahiajiokú is actually known by a lot of things or a lot of names. While some places or many places call her Ahiajiokú, some other places call her Ifejioku, some also call her Njoku, some call her Ahiajiokú. Depending, as I said, on the particular part of Igboland visited, there are different names which are ascribed or given to Ahiajiokú. But all the same, her characteristics do not change. She is the goddess of yam from its planting seasons to its harvest. Ahiajiokú is known as a very benevolent goddess, blessing her children with riches or with a successful harvest from the planting seasons, and also protecting the crops from any form of damage. Anytime the planting seasons didn't go well, it is said that Ahiajiokú was angry and needed to be appeased, as this was not a normal routine for most farmers. So that is why care is taken so that there would be no mistakes during the rituals, and the farmer, on the other hand, should make sure that his hands are clean or pure from any form of corrupt practices which might be offensive to Ahiajiokú. Ahiajiokú is seen as a mother, a very benevolent one, and as mentioned earlier, has very strong ties with Ani. And these goddesses are known to give good gifts to whoever follows the rules and makes good, decisive decisions that favor the gods and the goddesses of the land. One may ask, how did yam get to be such an important crop in all of Igboland, to the extent that there is a goddess who is responsible for both the planting seasons and the harvest of this particular crop? Well, to better understand this narrative, we have to go back in time to the stories that were told by our fathers to have a clearer context or a clearer understanding as to why there is so much significance to the crop yam. Well, back in the days, after Chukwokika created man in his image, he found out that man was beginning to act up and do things that displeased him. So he sent them out of their original habitat at Imri and made them to stay on their own, wander on their own, and fend for themselves. Now, humans had left their original place of abode, so they were practically just living, eating whatever they could find till everything was exhausted. After all, where they came from, they didn't farm or they didn't have any idea of farming. And so, this led to a great famine which began to kill every human being that was on earth. In this area, that's where the story gets tricky because there are different versions as to what happened afterwards, but still, there are still similarities in these stories. The first narrative or the first story states that a woman who was either from Afibu or a part of Ebony State decided that it was time for her to embark on a journey to seek the face of the gods and put an end to the hunger in her area. So she successfully did it and was contacted by Annie, or let's say she contacted Annie, sorry. When she contacted Annie, Annie told her all the things that she would do after consultation with the gods. So at this particular point, what Annie was told to tell her, or what the gods actually said, was that a sacrifice should be made. A sacrifice of a person should be made to make sure that there was food again. The woman took this advice and went back home and decided to make a sacrifice with her slave. She killed her slave and used the slave for a sacrifice, which after which she buried this slave in a particular plot of land, the head of this slave rather. Now, when this sacrifice was done, a crop sprung out of this slave's head. This crop was supposed to be a crop that everyone would consume and be happy, but rather this crop was described or known as G. abana, which was like called or which could be translated to a bastard yam, which people did not like and people couldn't eat. So she went again. And when she went again, there were now specific orders as to how to carry out this sacrifice. She was to sacrifice her child, her son, to make sure that this crop would be edible, or whatever crop that would proceed would be edible and would stop the famine. She went back and did just that, and so her son was sacrificed, and just the spot the son was buried, a crop sprung out, and that crop is what we know today as yam. And other tendrils or other parts or suckers for that yam was grown alongside with the yam, which made it easy for people to take, plant, and then began to feed, which put an end to the hunger in the land. Another version states that the whole community or the whole people who were available on earth decided to seek the face of Chukwokika and the other gods to know what to do to put an end to this suffering as they were dying of hunger in a very bad and excruciating way. So, a compromise, or will I say an idea, was reached. And this idea was that a sacrifice should be made of one male and one female. That this sacrifice, once done, or once the heads of these people or individuals used for this sacrifice was buried, there would be food. And so the people obliged and decided to do just that. A male and a female were brought and sacrificed, and after which they were laid, or their heads were laid in particular places as instructed by the gods. And it didn't take long. Crops or food crops began to spring out of the burial place of these particular individuals. One was the yam, which grew out from the male's head, while the other was cocoyam, which grew out on the female's head. This points to the reason why yam is seen as the king of crops, why yam is actually believed to be a man's crop and why cocoyam is seen as a woman's crop or is closely tied and identified with femininity or women. And this played a part in the roles that came up afterwards when it came to planting these crops. Men planted yams while women planted more of cocoyams. But in all this, after this sacrifice was made and these things grew, there was no hunger in the land, and people began to eat the yams that were produced, and furthermore began to plant and grow these crops. This is where Ahiajoku comes to the picture. No one knows exactly how she came about, but because of the significance of yam and what yam has done for these people, a position was appointed to a goddess who was in charge of yams. She made sure that everything that had to do with the planting process or the planting procedures up to the harvest was smooth and it was well taken care of. She is a lesser known deity, Ahiajiokú, so most of her powers are not in a wild range. They are not in a wide range. They are just for the sole purpose of production and harvest of these cash crops. When we talk about the New Yam Festival, or anytime we hear the New Yam Festival, especially in Igboland, we should know that this is a time or a festival set aside, or some sort of public holiday set aside by the Igbo people to honor Ahiajiokú after a successful planting season. Now, this particular event is highly important as it commences the eating and the celebration of a successful planting period. This particular event or this particular festival is not taken lightly. It is very important, and so important to the extent that no yam is ever eaten after harvest till the festival has commenced. The festival marks the beginning of any consumption of any of these yams, as it was a sacred duty of every farmer to present their produces before Ahiajiokú and thank her for a successful planting period, as well as offer sacrifices to her as part of the thanks or part of the offering. So one may ask, how did all these festivals or how did all these rituals take place? Well, after a particular planting season and successful harvest, that is, all the yams are brought together. Every farmer brought their yams and kept them away from people so that it will not be eaten. It is said that anytime a yam is eaten without being blessed by Ahiajiokú, there were consequences that followed suit, which also included death. So, in reverence to that fact, everyone harvested their yam and kept it. A special day was fixed to commence or to commemorate the successful planting season and consumption of these yams. So, on the day of the said event, everyone gathers at the village square with their produces or with their yams, as well as the elders of each particular clan or each particular compound. These people come, and as I said, everyone is responsible, or everyone is available for this particular event. When everyone is gathered, the Dibia or native doctor that is in charge of this kind of rituals known as ACG is actually present and comes to perform the ritual. Only him is responsible for carrying out these delicate rituals. He carries out the ritual, which can vary from place to place. Whichever place or part of Igboland that you're from has a specific kind of ritual that is different from probably any other part of Igboland. But generally, it is believed that a sacrifice of a goat or chicken is made, first of all, and then a yam is being cut into pieces and dedicated to the goddess. Some prayers and chants are made, and after all this ritual is completed, festivities commence. Now, people can go back home and cook the yams in assorted styles and serve it to their family members, to friends, to neighbors, and almost anyone around. There will be festivity and drinking and eating as well. which means that everywhere was just like a very big, beautiful party. And at that point, the eating of these new yams have commenced, and everyone can literally do whatever they want to do with their yams. This particular event or festival is very important as it marks a successful planting season as well as the beginning of the consumption of the crops that they had planted for their own nourishment and for their own well-being. Although Ahiajiokú is not considered as the top 5 most powerful gods and goddesses in Igboland, it is important not to underestimate her role in Igbo's livelihood or in Igbo's traditions and cultures. Ahiajoku was responsible for everything that had to do with the planting season and the harvest of an important cash crop to the Igbo people. That is why she was reverenced, and that is why she wasn't taken lightly. Now, about the festivals, these New Yam festivals still take place today, but due to a number of factors, some activities that happened there have been watered down. While some villages or some parts of Igbo land still stick to the original or the authentic ritual and culture or way by which the whole New Yam festival was carried out, some other or many other Igbo areas or Igbo villages or Igbo institutions have kind of watered down on some of the activities or some of the rituals that went on during the New Yam festival. Most times, sacrifices or some inconsiderate sacrifices are not made, and this is partly due to the advent of Christianity and the colonization that took place in Igbo land afterwards. But all the same, it is important that we know that there was a deity that was actually responsible for these aspects, such as planting and harvest of a particular crop. And for the most part, as the record says, she always came true. So, this is what we know about Ahiajoku so far and so good. Are there some things that I probably did not mention about Ahiajoku, or are there some stories I didn't tell about Ahiajoku, but you have an idea of it, or you've heard it, or you were told these stories at some point? Please let me know in the comment section. I would really love to hear from you. And if you're new here, I want to say a big welcome to you. Thank you for joining in. And on this channel, we talk about mysteries, folklores, and cultures that are of African origin. So please feel free to hit that subscribe button and click on that notification bell so you won't miss any of our weekly uploads. I am Lewini, and I want to say stay safe, stay sane, and stay out of trouble.